Is this on? Hey, so that was one great PR presentation, and I had so many questions. So next speaker is Rob Fitzpatrick, who were yesterday a few at his master classes over here. Raise your hands. I know that was, wow. Yeah, approach those people if you want to know how good was Rob yesterday. Rob is founder of Startup Toolkit and co-founder of Founders-Centric. Both of these initiatives are around early stage startups, so he knows a lot. And previously, he also had his own business, Habit Industries, where he helped big companies do, like MTV and Sony, to run user-generated advertising, the dark side of you, right? So please welcome Rob Fitzpatrick.
Oh. Thank you, thank you. Good morning, everybody. So my experience was that I sort of fell into startups hugely unprepared about 7 years ago. I had no business experience. I'm a developer, and our whole team was product guys. We were an artist and like a couple designers, a couple developers, and we went through YC kind of on an accident, and we were looking at the numbers of the business. You know, you look at it and you kind of put it in a spreadsheet and you go, okay, does this make sense? And we started out building playful toys for kids. Basically, let kids make cartoons. And the kids didn't really care, but we were getting a lot of calls from big brands. Like, I remember this one ridiculous week, like I got calls from Sony, from Warner, from Disney, from basically like everyone. And they were saying, hey, can we license your product? And I thought, yeah, that's easy, right? We'll just switch the business we'll just white label it. We'll go into enterprise sales. That can't be hard. And so for the next couple of years, I learned how hard it is. And I took so many meetings with these customers. And I basically just wasted all my time because I wasn't getting the right kind of feedback. I wasn't, you know, you go in and you have a meeting and you leave and you go back to your team and you're like, hey, they really liked it, guys. But actually, like, they don't convert. And it took me a long time to kind of understand why that was happening. So I just want to share that with you guys today on the hopes that it takes a lot of time to set up these meetings, to go talk to people. And like, time is basically your most precious resource as a founder. You know, you need your attention. You need to be focused. You are moving the business forward. So if you're going to spend your time talking to people, you should, you know, spend it in a way that's useful. So the kind of my path is I did that company and a couple others, and now I've joined up with 3 other guys who have a similar background, and we're kind of bouncing around between accelerator programs around Europe and trying to figure out what actually works for early stage startup education. So we've seen this in like a lot of cases, and hopefully it can help you out. The way it goes, you have an idea, you get excited, you want to create the big vision, but if you go all the way to the end of the big vision, it's too far. You can't do the whole jump all at once, right? That's what happened in the dot-coms. Like, so we build these little stepping stones. This is kind of lean startup, and everyone's stepping stones are their own. We can't just listen to someone else's do this, do this, do this guidance, because our company is going to be different. Even the most experienced guys have started, what, like 5 companies? That's not a lot of data points to tell you how to run your business. So you need to learn the skills to be able to make your own decisions. Talking to people helps. Like, you go out, you get your suit, you start getting meetings, and you are talking about your idea. And then this is sort of where it goes wrong. You sit down and it starts to get a bit awkward. You go into, especially in the early stages, you go into a meeting. You sit down and they go, so, show me what you got. What do you have to sell? And you're sort of like, I don't really have anything to sell. And they go, oh, well, what's the meeting for? And at this point, you're so hugely off track, it's really difficult to recover. And the framing, the way to set these up is actually really simple. It just has to be done, and it makes the whole process incredibly, incredibly fast. Instead of it taking like 3 hours to do a customer interview, where you're commuting, you're dealing with calendars, you sit down for an hour calendar block, like these things should really take about 5 minutes, and they can easily happen at the pub. Like, you don't need all the formality. The big kind of misconception is that when we talk about our idea, we feel like we're being scientific. I go, oh, I'm getting feedback. You know, I'm talking about my idea. Do you like my idea? Like, what do you think? What should I do? And I just want you to mentally reframe talking about your idea to sort of like begging for compliments. Because if I go to you and I go, like I'm excited, right? I go, hey, I'm a little scared of this. It's taken a lot of work to develop. I quit my job. I dropped out of university. Whatever I did, it's a big deal for me. Here it is. What do you think? The feedback is not necessarily neutral. And even if someone's particularly honest, like they tend to hedge it a little bit, and it's really hard to get the pure signals you need. So we need to start thinking of compliments, which we bring back to our team, and we say like, hey, everyone loved it. What that does is that convinces us to overinvest in potentially bad ideas. And that's kind of what I did with my company. I would go into these meetings with the big customers, and we ended up getting a few of them, but like for a huge amount of time, I would go in and they would go, oh, that's so innovative. That's really interesting. Like, I like it. Have any of you guys had meetings like this? And then you leave, and I at least, I would go back to my team, and they go, how did it go? And I go, that meeting went awesome. They loved it. They love us. Like, there was so much love in the air. That was an amazing dynamic. And then like 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, they still haven't given us a pile of money. And it is like, what's going on? So these compliments, if we let them distract us from the truth, they can be really, really dangerous, and they cause us to make bad decisions. So think of compliments as the enemy. Compliments are not a positive data point. Compliments are a scary monster which are trying to kill your time and destroy your company. So we want to actively avoid and ignore the compliments. So talking about your idea is fishing for compliments. And if we don't do that, what do we do? There's kind of a, you know, people say that you're not meant to ask your mom if your business is a good idea because your mom loves you and thinks that everything you do is great. And so she's going to lie to you and say, yes, it's wonderful. Or she doesn't know. You know, it's like not a good source of data, right? You go, hey mom, I'm coming up with an app. It's a travel planning app. You went on a trip recently. Isn't it annoying? She goes, yeah, it was annoying, I guess, to plan my trip. You go, I'm going to make an app. It's going to get all the different flights together, all your hotel options. You can collaborate with your friends. You can share and split the bill. It recommends restaurants. It's like the digital travel planner, agent, everything on an app. And she goes, oh, that sounds incredible. That's a problem everybody has. Like, I'm sure this is going to be really big. And you go, aha. And so you go off and you spend all your money and you develop the app, and like your mom doesn't use it and you're sad, and it really strains your relationship. And and then she goes, when are you getting a real job? And you go, oh no. But this actually, like, what we were doing here is we were putting the burden of truth on the person we were talking to. We were giving them our idea, and we were expecting them to somehow be totally honest and give us useful feedback. This changes completely if we assume the responsibility for getting the truth, and we accept that, okay, like they're going to be, like, they're a human, they're going to be biased, they're going to be lying, not out of malice, but just because that's what happens. So we can change this, and we fix the conversation by basically not talking about our idea, and instead talking only about the customer's life, the way it works, the way they're currently dealing with their problems, how much those problems cost them. And so we go in, we do the same conversation again. We go, hey mom, you went on a trip recently. She goes, yeah, I did. We go, how was it? She's like, oh, it was amazing. Couldn't have been better. Like, how did you plan it? Like, talk me through what you did leading up to it. And she goes, oh, I've just always wanted to go to Aruba. You know, and so I went. It was great. You go, oh, did you Google around for hotels and stuff? She goes, no, I saved clippings from the newspaper. Every weekend, they talk about the best travel destinations, and they did a special on Aruba, so I just saved one, and I went there. And you go, oh, like, what about, like, once you were there? Like, and she goes, oh, yeah, I use my phone. I get, you know, internet in the hotel, and I looked around for recommendations. So you go, okay. You're like, and was it, like, okay, did you try anything else? Did you use a travel agent? She's like, no, why would I use a travel agent? And you go, okay. So basically what you've learned here is that she's not searching online to organize this stuff, so how is she going to find your app? It's just not part of her behavior, but she is looking in the newspaper, so potentially traditional PR or like actual old media advertising would let you reach this customer. She doesn't see like the recommendations as a real value because she's not currently like looking for recommendations, right? We're learning all of this real concrete information about the customer because we never mentioned our idea. And she's not telling us what to build. She's just telling us what she cares about. And once we understand her life, we can take our own kind of leap as an entrepreneur and come up with the correct solution. Then we go back and we try to get her to commit to it. You know, once people are asked to actually buy something, they stop lying to you really quickly. They go, oh yeah, it's lovely, I love it, it's amazing. Yeah, definitely, we would totally use this. And then you go, put down a deposit, and they go, I'll think about it. And that's useful. That's an incredible asset that we have as founders, because we can put people to these decisions relatively early, especially with pre-sales, pre-orders, deposits, even getting someone to commit to being an alpha user, and you're going to write a case study about them. That takes a fair amount of their time, and people will think seriously before they commit to that. So we can combine talking about their life with asking for commitments about specific products to get really clear data quite early in the process. So I call this the mom test. It's basically questions that even your mom can't lie to you about. And it means that you don't want fluffy hypotheticals in the future. I would do this, I always do this, I usually do this, I will do this. You want concrete facts in the past. Like the last time I planned a trip, this is what I did. So concrete facts in the past instead of hypotheticals in the future. You want to talk about their life, not your idea, and you want to talk as little as possible. And admittedly, startups go through stages. Like an early stage startup is not the same as a later stage startup, and the type of information that you're gathering changes as you go. When you're first beginning, your biggest question is, does anybody care at all about what I'm doing? And a lot of startups go out of business with 0 people ever caring that they were created, which isn't what you want for the thing that you're pouring your heart and soul into. And so one of the most important questions that I like to ask is like, how are they trying to deal with it now? If someone's not already looking for a solution, how are they going to find yours? You know, like there are lots of problems that are problems, but people don't actually care enough about to try to solve. You know, like how many people do you know that are like, yeah, I'm unhealthy, I should go to the gym, it's a problem. But do they go to the gym? Like, no, because they know it's like a problem, but they're not motivated enough to actually do anything about it. And a lot of startups, like myself included, we fall for this, where we solve theoretical problems that people know are problems, but they don't really care enough to bother with. And the way to distinguish this is to figure out what they're already doing about it. If someone's like, yeah, it's a problem, we had to hire an agency and we're spending 120 grand a year on them just to deal with this, then you know that's a real problem, right? There's going to be like, there's an awesome place to fit your startup in their life. Then later on, once we've actually got a product, just asking about their life is no longer helpful. If you've got something to sell, you need to be selling it, or at least asking for some sort of commitments, because you're beyond the open stage. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But we basically talk about the customer, their problem is really important, their current solution to the problem, their budgets. People don't tell you honestly about money once you've got something to sell. But if you come in early enough in the process, people will be surprisingly open. You go, hey, I'm not selling anything, I'm a founder, I'm really trying to improve this space, I've got a vision for it. Again, we don't have a product yet, you could really help me out, you're an industry expert, can you point me in the right direction? Like, you know, I need 20 minutes just to cut through the fog because there's so many options and we're getting overwhelmed. Someone goes, I totally agree with Colette that if you can sort of be really specific about what you're looking for from people, they're very willing to help. And they love it. Everyone wants to help a startup if they can. And so you do that, and then you go, what are the budgets like in this space? How much do you guys pay for these? How does it work? How much money does this cost you? And you're getting honest answer after honest answer because you haven't put it in the sales context. So questions like, do you think it's a good idea, are obviously the worst possible, right? You're putting your ego on a platter, and you're going, please say something nice about me. So this is what we want to avoid. And there's some more subtle versions. If we go, would you buy a product to solve this problem? It's also like we're talking about our product, and we're saying, would you? Well, yeah, I might one day, maybe. What's like the correct version of this? Yeah, yeah, it's not like, would you buy it one day? It's like, buy it. Or it's like, if you don't actually have the product in a place where you can pre-sell it or take a deposit or get some kind of commitment, we could ask something like, how do they currently deal with it? Like, if they're not buying something to solve it already, why are they going to suddenly decide to buy your solution? It's like people's behavior, like we're surviving, right? Unless someone's currently on fire, they have a solution to most of their problems. They might not be ideal or cost effective, but it's like you have to accept that. Very few of us are solving unsolved problems. We're just replacing telephones or Excel or pencils or talking to people. This stuff's been around for a while. So how do you currently deal with it is a great way to pull it out. Talk me through the last time you had it is, again, awesome. It's the concrete data about their life in the past. How much would you pay for it? Is a bit of a mistake, because again, you're like, you've shown them what you're doing, you're hopeful, you're bright-eyed, they're like, you know, and people weirdly, they say they would pay more than they'll actually pay. I don't know why. You would expect people, how much would you pay for this? And everyone's like, oh, it would be great if it was free. But in reality, people go, wow, that would save me an hour a month. I guess I would pay $40 for that. And in reality, it doesn't really play out. So I like to avoid these questions. How much does it cost you is great. This only really works for businesses. Questions about the budgets, like consumers don't usually have a clear sense. And also, if you're building consumer apps, you tend to be, you're not solving explicit problems often. Often you're like creating joy. Like most phone apps, they don't solve problems, they create joy. They're very tangible, you get them and you're like, ah, I like that feels good. And so it's a lot harder to get these clear signals early. You have to build a prototype much sooner and actually put it in people's hands. And it shifts into like watching them use it. In general, we're looking to avoid two main problems. The first one I already mentioned, and that's exposing our egos. And anytime you talk about your idea without being able to ask for a commitment, you're exposing your ego. If someone comes up to you on the street and they go, hey man, can I have a euro? You go, no, because they're asking for something. If they go, hey man, do you like my hat? You go, yeah, that's a lovely hat. Because giving away compliments costs us nothing. We're happy to share them. And if they're free to give away, we can't really value receiving them, at least for our business. The second reason that people lie to us is because we're being annoying. And I'll tell you right now that you can get anyone to say your business is awesome if you're annoying enough. Just like don't let them leave and keep telling them about more features. Eventually they're going to be like, you're right, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard. Here's my card. Let's have a meeting someday. They just want to leave. Like, and this isn't useful. And the hard pitch, it's like, I don't know. It's like, really, they're going to buy it? You're going to annoy them into buying it? I haven't seen that happen, but maybe there are some counterexamples. And this stuff is really an enemy. And actually, can I get, sorry, I know this is weird. What's my time left? Does anyone have the clock? Is anyone in charge here? All right. So this does the enemy, right? Like, bad data put me out of business, which is really annoying. And I wasted a bunch of investor money, and I had to fire all my employees and my friends. Like, bad data was really the enemy. I was 100% convinced that my startup was awesome. Like, you know, I was having so many good meetings with all these big names. I was sitting down with like the CEOs of like MTV and all these places, and I was like doing all this stuff. I was like, we're killing it. Everyone was saying nice things. And then we went out of business. And I went from deciding which island to buy to being like, oh, how do I pay my rent? And that's upsetting. And it was because I basically believed the compliments that I was getting were real progress for my startup. So this stuff is the enemy, and we want to actively fix it. There's essentially like, there's two ways we get bad data, the ego and being annoying, but there's basically 4 kinds of bad data. The first one is compliments. I talked about them. You just aggressively ignore them. And once you start looking for this, it's easier to hear when your co-founder's talking. Your co-founder will be like, yeah, we do this and this. And someone goes, oh, that's amazing, really cool. And it goes, yeah, and it does this and this. And they're like, oh, nice. When does it launch? Keep me in the loop. And it's like compliment, 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 stalling tactic, delaying. Like, there's no commitment here, right? You're basically just like, you're getting a bunch of nice things said about you, but it doesn't actually move the business forward. So whenever you hear those things, you just like, you push them aside and you move on to what you're actually trying to figure out. Whether that's facts about your customer or whether that's moving toward a sale. Fluff is what I call anything that's hypothetical or in the future. We talked about these. I would do this. I usually do this. I always do this. Get specific. When it happened last time, you know, anchor it to the past. When it happened last time, talk me through it. The funniest one I've seen, I was talking to someone about their email, and I was thinking about email, like email management stuff, because I'm like, email's a problem. I was talking to them, they go, oh no, it's totally not a problem. I'm always at inbox 0. I'm an inbox 0 nut, you know, I'm perfect. I was like, well, you know, so okay, that's fluffy, right? Someone said I'm always. Always is generic, so I look for a concrete counterexample. So you go, well, when's the last time it didn't work out? And they go, like, you know, I was at this hotel, they didn't have internet for 5 days, like I couldn't get any email. Like when I came back, I had 2,000 emails in my inbox. It was a nightmare to recover from. So it's like, okay, so you're perfect with email except for when you aren't, and then it really messes with your life. And a lot of like what we're looking for is actually not the way people normally see themselves, but these little exceptions that we can help with. So you anchor fluff, you get specific. Someone goes, yeah, that's a huge problem. You go, well, what did you do about it last time it came up? Be super suspicious of anything generic like this. When people give you feature requests, and this is also, if you're going through an accelerator or you're talking to lots of mentors, this is particularly useful. you want to know where that feature request comes from. Because usually the feature request is not valid, but the motivations behind it are great. Someone goes, oh, you should really integrate with Excel. And you go, why? Like, what would that let you do that you can't do without it? The example for me is that I was talking to clients, and we built analytics for their advertising campaigns. And they were going, oh, we really need an analytics dashboard. And I went, cool. So I spent essentially like 6 months building an analytics dashboard. You know, my team, and they're way better programmers than I am. And so we built this thing. It was a big chunk of development time. And then we gave it to them, and they never used it. They literally never used it, right? Our traffic was 0. It wasn't 1. We wanted 1. We wanted our one client to be using it, and they didn't. And so I was sad. And eventually they called, and they asked me to add features to the dashboard. And I'm like, why do you want that? You don't even use it. And they go, yeah, no, we don't use it. But, you know, I think my boss would be impressed if it like looked nicer. And I was like, they were like, no one cares about the data. Cool. Are we toward the end? All right, cool. So we want to know the why, right? From customers, from everyone. And that's essentially the end of it. The 3 things that I would recommend that you do before you go into meetings is just write down the 3 things you want to learn from that type of person. And the main ones are a customer, like a key partner, or industry experts. Because if you go into the meetings and you don't know what you're trying to learn, you'll end up just chatting. And that's not really, it doesn't move your business forward, and it's not a good use of time. Do it before conferences as well. Like, always keep in mind the 3 big things you want to learn. So hopefully that is useful. And when you do it right, these things can be really, really quick. You can actually start doing your conversations at a place like this, because you don't need to set up a formal meeting. You meet someone and you go, hey, oh, you're an author. Like, how do you deal with this problem? And they go, oh, well, I do this and this and this. And you're like, great, bam, that's real customer learning that you can bank. You didn't need to pitch. You didn't need to set up a calendar slot. Just get what you're trying to learn to move your business forward. Because all of this stuff, the process, it's easy to get lost in it. But what's the point, right? The point is that the time you spend here saves you more time than that, so that you can build a better company. Because ultimately, any of this stuff, like the planning, the strategy, the customer conversations, it's meant to speed you up, not slow you down. So spend the smallest amount of time you can on it to get like enough learning to move forward confidently. And yeah, that's basically it. So thanks a lot, guys.
Works. Mike, oh, cool. We have time for 2 short questions, but before you ask your question and raise your hand, don't ask chitty-chatty question, but with specific one, fast one, precise one. So, Christoph.
I'm Chris from QMinder. I have specific questions. How to deal with customers that you have already, because they speak to you only when something bad happens.
Yeah. I don't really. Actually, I got maybe a couple pieces or things that have worked for me. In the enterprise space, it's hard because most people will ignore you. But if you're selling it to big companies, there's so many people you have to convince that the dynamic it takes is eventually one of them decides they really like you, and they leave their team, kind of symbolically, and they're now on your team, and they're helping you pitch to the rest of their partners. And when someone flips like that and they become your evangelist inside of the company, it's like that's your access point. And it's really hard to go through the person, at least I found, it's hard to go through the person who's just using it. But if you spot these people who are helping you close the sales, like they're your source of kind of infinite customer insight. On the consumer side, I think it's really hard. Like, you have an app, let's say you have 100,000 users of your app, it's still so hard to just find a few of them to talk to. So one thing that I do with all my projects in the early days, and this was the best advice I ever got from my investors, is he said, it's the CEO's job to email the first 1,000 people who sign up. And I actually kept doing it well past 1,000 because I found so much value in it. But just whenever someone gave me their email, I'd be like, hey, I'm Rob, I'm the founder. Just let me know if you have any questions. And I just put that there. And then the people who were most excited, who were the ones who were going to give me that time, they would reach back out and they go, oh, this is incredible. Can you do this? Can you do this? And we would spin those off into Skype conversations, into email conversations. But you're not going to talk to everyone. And I think this is true of sales, and it's a weird mindset thing. because we're used to winning. We're used to, like, through most of your life, you're able to do everything that's put in front of you. And with these kind of, if you're doing sales, if you're doing customer development, most conversations are going to fail. And that's a weird thing to wrap your head around, but it's okay, because the failure rate doesn't matter. If 99 people ignore you, that's fine, as long as like one says yes, right? Because it's the conversations that work that you get the learning from, and then you can apply that to everyone else. But yeah, you can't fix every conversation, you can't talk to every customer.
So, one more really short and precise question, like actionable. I'm spooking people away, I guess. To the coffee break, I guess. So, we have short coffee break. Coffee is upstairs.
And may I say one final thing?
You can.
In the question spot. I wrote a short guidebook about this, and if you want to really dig into the nitty-gritty, it's at momtestbook.com. And yeah, that's basically it. So
Rob is
thanks a lot,
going
guys.
to be around, so you can catch him.